Okay, hello. Welcome to an Asia Society triennial event. This is our virtual book club with author Cathy Park Hong. And I am Sarah McCaffrey, and I am the manager of interdisciplinary arts at Asia Society New York. At this time, when we are social distancing, I just wanted to first express gratitude to all of you who have gathered here tonight, and also gratitude for our impetus to be pulled together to share this time with one another tonight. And that's Cathy's book, Minor Feelings: An Asian American Reckoning. So I wanted to acknowledge who's here tonight. We have such a special group. We have our Asia Society members. Thank you for your support and for, of course, being part of the Asia Society family. In addition, Asia Society has invited organizations to be our book club partners for this event. So those partners reached out to their networks and invited them to join us tonight. So amongst this group this evening, we have folks from the following 7 organizations: Asia Art Archive in America, Asian American Arts Alliance, Asian American Feminist Collective, Asian American Writers Workshop, Gyopo, Rock the Boat, and Stop Discrimination. So that's such an exciting group. I hope that you'll enjoy meeting and sharing with one another, and perhaps find something generative, because I all know that we need that right now, something like a seed to take with you. So the flow of today, this event, is that we will kick off with an introduction by our author, Cathy Park Hong, and then we will break up into smaller groups to discuss the book, and my colleague Ken Tan will explain in a bit how that works, just in case you've never used the breakout room feature in Zoom. And then after those discussions in the breakout rooms, we'll all return back here to what I call this main room all together, and we'll have a Q&A with the author. Okay, so let's get started. It is my immense pleasure to introduce Cathy Park Hong. She is the author of 3 poetry collections, including Dance Dance Revolution and Engine Empire. She is a recipient of the Wyndham Campbell Literature Prize, a Guggenheim Fellowship, and a National Endowments for the Arts Fellowship. Her poems have been published in Poetry, the New York Times, the Paris Review, McSweeney's, Boston Review, and other journals. She is a poetry editor of the New Republic and full professor at the Rutgers University Newark MFA program in poetry. So I'm so excited, and I know that there was so much enthusiasm to be gathered here tonight, and I'm going to shift the Zoom floor over to Cathy, and we will hear from her.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And I haven't actually really prepared anything. I thought you guys should just kind of break into your break rooms and talk about my book. And to which I'm totally humbled. I'm so humbled and grateful that all of you have read Minor Feelings and are gathered together to read about it. It's really quite a dream. And I just didn't expect this many people. I've actually never been to a book club. I've never been part of a book club, as weird as that may sound. And I just imagine a book club of being like, I don't know, 5 or 6 people in a living room drinking tea and talking about, you know, the latest bestseller. And so this is to be part of this kind of super book club is really quite a delight. And I notice that there are a few familiar faces, familiar names, and I'm really gratified to see that. And I'm also really excited that there are so many, that there's this joining of Asian American organizations and to talk about this book. I just I want to hear from you. I'm a little talked out about my book, quite frankly. But anyway, I am happy to answer any questions. I think, people keep saying that Minor Feelings is very timely. And I've always been suspicious of that description, timely, because, it always seems like, timely books tend to be books about race, and race is not, it's not a controversial subject. That's a subject that's, um, that has its moment for a temporary period. I think it's always an issue. And but I guess I was a little surprised myself by the collision of this book coming out and with COVID-19 and the anti-Asian racism that's happening, as well as what happened most recently with the murder of George Floyd. And I think when we talk about anti-Asian racism, we also need to talk about anti-Black racism. And this is also in light of one of the cops being Asian as well. And that's something that we need to really consider. And I guess maybe what I can say is that towards the end of my book, I talk about belonging, or reconsider this idea of belonging, because this seems to be a theme, and that it seems to be a desire that Asian Americans want in the books, in books about us, and and the stories, or any other story that we may tell ourselves. But I think it's also important to think about, like, what kind of belonging do we want to, what kind of America do we want to belong in? And that's important to think about as well. But that's it. I'm really excited to talk to you guys. I'm really grateful, really happy to be part of this Zoom group with all of you. That's it.
Thanks for that intro, Cathy. So let me introduce myself. I'm Ken Tan, the Executive Director of Global Artistic Programs here at Asia Society, also Deputy Director of the museum here. So we are all, you say you're honored. We are also very, very honored and excited to be gathered here today to discuss your book. And as you can see, we have a full room. So I just wanted to share also that a lot of the themes and ideas that you actually have expressed in the book is explored in our upcoming event. So, ideas of identity, race, it's all part of this bigger thing that falls under our, what we call the inaugural Asia Society Triennial, that actually, for everyone's information, was supposed to be next Friday. It was supposed to open next Friday, but of course, COVID-19 happened. Thankfully, we were able not to cancel, but reschedule it into the fall. So now the first ever Asia Society Triennial, which means this is going to be the first of every 3 years, will happen in the fall and run through from October 27th, 2020 this year, all the way to June 27, 2021. So we're very, very excited with that to, with this event right now, be the first of many of these sort of virtual programs that will lead us all the way to the triennial. And the triennial itself is sort of made up of like exhibitions, but also programs. Hopefully we can do physical programs in the fall, but we have, as I said, lined up a lot of virtual interdisciplinary sort of panels like this, forums, and also online performances. So hopefully everybody here in this group can still join us for the triennial when it comes. But anyways, enough of the triennial. We are here to discuss your book, so let's jump right in. Let me just give you a little bit of a technical explanation because it does take a little bit of explanation. Basically, we are all gathered in what we are called now the main room, and we will start to break everyone out into smaller groups. So very soon you will receive a notification on your screen that says the host, which is Sarah, will be inviting you into the breakout room. Once you click accept, you will automatically be joined, you will be pushed and you will join that breakout room. In those rooms, once we have all gathered, and each room will have its own moderator, once we have all gathered, we will have about 30 minutes where we will have discussions. Just have a very open and organic, natural discussion of the book. Once, after 30 minutes, once we're all done, we will join back this room, this main room, to have a Q&A with you. So again, you will receive very soon a notification pop up, click accept, and then automatically you will join the breakout room and your moderator will then take you, will have further instructions on how you can start your discussions in those smaller groups. So very soon, Sarah will be sending out these invites now. If you receive one in the next few minutes, just click accept and we can continue from there. So I wish everybody a fantastic discussion and see you back in the main room in a bit.
I hope you all had a wonderful discussion. I felt very left out. I was here in the main room, but I hope you all enjoyed it. Okay, so now we are going to go into our question and answer section of the event so we can, after discussing the book, ask Cathy directly things that have been on our mind and just get all of our burning questions out there. She's here, so why not take this opportunity? So Cathy, there's so many people, I actually can't see your screen. Could you unmute yourself and maybe just say hello so I could spotlight your video?
Hey everyone.
There she is. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so how we're going to do this is because we're such a large group, we're going to use the chat feature to ask questions. So down at the bottom, if you don't have chat already open, down at the bottom, you should see those 3 dots that say more, and you can click on that and then click chat and open up the chat function and go ahead and place your question within that chat box, and I will then read them to Cathy. And we can get started with asking Cathy questions. So we have one question there now. Cathy, I don't know if you want to take that one.
I don't think I actually see it. I don't know. I have the chat function on, but is it at the top? No,
it's the bottom.
It says, I just have, is Helen okay now? That's the last one.
That's our first question. Yeah, that's our first question.
Is that the question? Is that
what?
Oh God. That's hilarious. That's just like Helen. Yeah. Who's Helen?
Wait, there's a follow-up, Cathy. This person saying, I must know. 2 exclamation points.
I can't answer that question. I mean, you know, that's not her real name, right? So I was like, it takes me a second. Yeah, she's fine. And I'm not going to say where she is. I'm not going to say yeah, where she lives or what she's doing as a career or anything. I can't reveal any of that, but she is not, she is totally fine. And she is even on social media, and I am really scared that one day she will contact me and, send me a really angry email or something. So, but yeah, she's okay.
Okay. So let me see. Oh, okay. We have 2 questions that have come up.
Okay. Should I could just read the question out loud?
Sure.
Maybe?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then that way you can also choose which
Yeah.
one you want to answer also.
Oh, okay. What struck me the most was your statement that writing this book was a dare, a way for you to pry open the prejudice you clung to, that writing talking about your racial identity was non-urgent. I'm where you were before you wrote this book. In completing it, publishing it, having people respond to it, what have you discovered? Have you found some clarity or relief? Yes, definitely. I have definitely found a lot of clarity, a lot of relief, a lot of gratitude. I was not expecting this book to just to connect to so many people. I mean, I was actually in the breakout room. I was telling um, the group that I was in that I was afraid that this book was going to disappear. In fact, I was pretty sure that the book was going to disappear, that the minute it was published, it was going to be just invisible. I'm like, I'm writing about an invisible race. No one cares about a book about Asian American. They're going to just think it's like a sociology textbook or something, and they're just not going to read it. And so, and it was going to confirm all my worst fears that anything I say, that I was like, I could be, screaming at the top of my lungs and no one would hear me. And so that's what I thought. That was my fear. I mean, I was hoping that people would, it would reach out to people. And then, so I was very surprised. I was hoping for it, but I was very surprised, but also just so gratified that the anger and the frustration and the confusion that I was feeling was also felt by others. And I've said this repeatedly, by no means is this, is my reckoning at all definitive. And I hope that there will be many, many, many more books and artworks and films and, actions that further complicate the Asian American identity and complicate what race is in America. So, yes.
So Cathy, we've just had an influx of questions, so I can choose them for you because there's now
maybe
so many.
you should, because okay.
Yeah. Okay, so there's just been so many, which is great. But here's one. What was your experience like finding about and going through dictee? I'm amazed every time I open up dictee and how Cha uses this terrain of language as her playground, or as you mentioned, as an instrument.
What was I just wanted to, what was the first part of the question? What was your, finding out and going through dictee? It was, I discovered dictee pretty early on, like when I was in college, when I was 19 years old, thank God. Because that's why it was so seminal. I mean, I write about it in the essay, right? It was so seminal to the way I thought about language and culture and Asian American identity. And I found it really empowering from the beginning. I didn't understand it at first. I just, I think I just loved the way it looked, and that you could do that with language, and that a book can didn't just have to be a book of poems or a novel or a memoir. It could be like everything. And that was like really attractive to me. And that was really kind of a seminal book to how I approach poetry. But what was amazing about Dictée is that you could read it like again and again and again, and it just, you learn something new, or you find something, you learn something new. Like in the beginning, a lot of people might find it to be impenetrable, and it's the book that definitely rewards many different readings, you know. And it was really fascinating. That essay was probably the hardest essay to write. Like, you know, it was really interesting to talk to her brother John about Dictée, because I never read it biographically, you know, and it was just really moving to hear about it from his perspective, and how all of these passages that seemed sort of impenetrable were actually, you know, stories that her mother used to tell her, or was about like their family history when they were in Korea. So it was just, I don't know, it's so much. And even now, like I taught it just last semester, I still find so much in Dictée. Mm-hmm.
So one question that has come up is about parenthood. This person is writing, "Hi, Cathy, love your book. I want to buy a bunch of copies and just hand them out like candy. I also have a young daughter, and I worry a lot about if she will encounter the same problems as me growing up as Asian America in white America. My parents definitely did not talk about race growing up. I don't plan on raising my daughter without talking about race. Hashtag Black Lives Matter, systemic injustices, model minority. Do you have any advice on talking to young people on becoming aware of what race is in America?"
I have a 5-year-old, so I'm going through it right now, and my parents too didn't have the apparatus. They had no, I mean, they were just trying to survive, you know, and just trying to make it in America. I think to talk about or think about race was like a luxury. I mean, I'm sure they faced a lot of racism, but they're like, well, this is just what it is. It's the reality of living in this country, and what are you going to do? And whereas, you know, I have to admit, when I was pregnant and I found out that as a girl, I was super excited, but also scared, because I was, you know, it took me a long time to be confident. I did not have an affirming childhood. You know, I was very insecure, and don't want that for my daughter. I really don't want that for my daughter. And so I was scared that she was going to encounter that. And so far, she has a completely different childhood, you know, and I think it's because of the way that both my partner and I are involved in raising her. I think that has a large part to do with it. And I don't really have any prescriptive advice. All I can say is that, like, from early on, we read to her as much as possible, and we read to her books by, you know, Dominican authors, or, you know, Chinese American authors, or Black authors. And we try to like just surround her with diversity. So it's not, and so far it's been working. I mean, she'll say, and we always talk about, you know, like say Martin Luther King Jr., or, you know, just, or Rosa Parks. And she, you know, and she says very, very naive things, you know. She's like, oh, I love how all Black people are famous, something like that. Or she doesn't understand, but I think that just having the seeds there from early on will help her. And I was nervous at first because when she was really, when she was in preschool, she just was gravitating towards the blonde, like the blonde princesses. It's like, oh my God, it's just whiteness is everywhere. There's no way you could get around that. And, and she was like, wanted to have only blonde friends or something. And I'm like, this is terrible. There's no way of getting around it. But she quickly got over that, and she has a lot of, she's proud that she's Korean. I mean, it may change, it may change, but I would like to think that we're living in a different time. I don't know what race is going to be like. I think I don't know if there's going to be, who knows? I mean, I like when I was writing about Asian American identity, I was talking about mostly our invisibility. I did not know that the book would be published at a time when Asian Americans were the target, East Asian Americans, to be East Asian Americans or anyone who looked East Asian American would be the target of hate crimes. So I think you just have to prepare your child and just to make sure that they're as confident as possible and be resilient for whatever comes next. I don't know if I answered your question. Because I don't think I have an answer for that.
Yeah, that's a difficult one.
Mm-hmm.
We have another question here, and it's gotten some bumps, some support for this. So we were struck by the thread and experience of shame throughout Cathy's book. How Cathy focused on the experience of shame in different generations. Why focus on shame as opposed to empathy in the experience of Asians in America and how we turn shame into action? And this is a moderator kind of wrapping up a discussion that they had in their breakout room group.
Why choose shame as an affect that can be turned into action as opposed to empathy? Is that the question?
The question was, why focus on shame as opposed to empathy in the experience of Asians in America?
I wanted to really, in the book, I wanted to tell a predominant feeling that I grew up experiencing when I was growing up, and I think there's enough books about empathy. I think empathy is talked about constantly, and I think that's almost like a kind of truism, right? Like, oh, you read literature because it teaches you to empathize, and it's a kind of virtuous. It's a virtuous emotion, or a virtuous, feeling that we all want in everyone, and that can be amplified through reading novels and poetry. And so I didn't really need, I think that's a given, right? Of course you need to be empathetic. For me, with minor feelings is a challenge to myself, and it was really to myself. It wasn't like, okay, this is what all Asian Americans feel. I really wanted to kind of wallow in the ugly feelings that aren't really talked about, that I don't really read or hear in other books and movies. I mean, yes, shame is discussed a lot, and shame is equated with Asian identity a lot, but in this really kind of fucked up orientalizing way, where you're just like sort of bowing your head and feeling shame, and it's just more about the performance of shame. And I've never read I haven't read a lot of books where it just really kind of gets deep, where the book really kind of deeply roots into sort of the internal feelings of being marginalized or being less than, or comparing, being like seeing yourself both in the first and third person. And I do think that those, whatever these minor feelings, ugly feelings need to be realized, I mean, like whether it's shame or anxiety or envy or any of that, you know. And it's like, and by recognizing it, it's a way of getting surpassing or getting over that shame, you know. Of course we need empathy for action, but I think it's also very important to kind of hold a mirror to all of the kind of kind of you know, when we're not allowed to express rage when we're young, it gets perverted and it gets internalized and distorted into in a way that it's almost like an autoimmune disease, right? Where you just start attacking yourself because you can't let it out. You know, it's like a kind of self-hatred. And that needs to be mirrored. That needs to be echoed, you know. I think if you just start from, let's be empathetic, a lot of people will nod and say, yes, that's good. But it doesn't really kind of get at, you know, what's eating at you, what's eating at a lot of people who are racial minorities in this country.
And Cathy, we have sort of a related question, like speaking about minor feelings. How do you deal with the guy, or how did you deal with the guy from your Crown Heights reading who had a racial awareness mediator? What are some strategies / approaches to expressing minor feelings, both to people / friends, especially non-Asians, and also creatively, besides writing a book? What were some responses from non-Asians who read this book?
I did not respond. I didn't respond heroically or anything, or I didn't wasn't a badass about it. I think I was just so shocked. This is a common experience where when someone says something racial or just dumb, I don't have normally I don't have the comeback. It happens like much later. And I was just like, you know, when someone says something like, oh, I hear Asians are next in line to be white. Well, what do you, and you say, no, that's bullshit. And then they say, well, okay, prove it to me. I was just kind of at a lot. I'm like, where do I even start? You know, and I was really, you know, it was true. Like what I wrote in the book is true. Like I was caught between wanting to tell him to fuck off or really kind of breaking down Asian American history. I just walked away. I mean, I was like, I don't have time for this. Why am I even wasting my time on this person? Like I think I started talking about Asian American history, and I'm like, why am I doing this? And I walked away and I said, I just excused myself and I left. And I was just incredibly frustrated, and I didn't know what was the correct way to behave, whether to school him, educate him, or just abandon the conversation. I don't know what the right way to have handled that was, the right mode of action. The other second part of the question was, what can you do besides write books? Is this can you repeat the second part of the question
sure.
again? I'm sorry.
The second part was, what are some strategies / approaches to expressing minor feelings, both to people / friends, especially non-Asians, and also creatively, besides writing a book?
I think you just have to speak up. I mean, I've become, it's become easy. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. You know, I think I was tongue-tied when I was talking to that guy because I was not expecting it. But I don't take that. I don't take it from friends or especially from men. I just, you know, I will immediately correct them or say, you know what, that's not right. That hurts my feelings. Or I challenge them, you know, when they say something clueless. I say, what do you mean by that? I'm not afraid to be confrontational. I'm not afraid to be argumentative. It hasn't hurt my career so far. Even if it does, it shouldn't matter. And I used to be afraid, and I'm no longer afraid. I think I'm also a very impatient person, and I can't waste time. I just don't have the tolerance to hear other people's bullshit, to hear white people's bullshit. I just don't. I used to have that time. I don't anymore. So when some white guy is mansplaining to me or just going on and on about a subject that they know nothing about, or about Asian Americans, I will just stop them. I will interrupt them. I will say, I don't need to hear this. Or, I just try to be just very clear and very direct and casual about it too. Humor always works too. Just being, just like, saying something, kind of a takedown or whatever you want to call it. It always works as well. And I think you just need to be very direct and to speak up, and just be fearless. Just be fearless about it. Artistically,
Cathy,
I would say,
Cathy,
yeah.
on that note, like, you kind of described how you went from being fearful to fearless, and then you had time and then you didn't have time. What was that transition? I'm sure it's so complicated, but could you speak to that?
A therapist, first of all, that helps. No, it really does. I reckon if you haven't, I know it's in my book, but I found the right therapist, and that really does wonders. I think that, and also finding a community, that is absolutely essential. Like finding friends who you could vent, and knowing that you're not alone. That's absolutely essential. That I have had. I'm grateful for that. And I've always, my other friend who I talk about in Minor Feelings, Erin, she is someone who I have. I wouldn't have been able to write this book if it weren't for her. Like, she was someone who we were always from college on. We were always talking about politics and art and race, and it wasn't like and we were always hashing it out, and always arguing with each other, always debating, always criticizing each other, and being mad at each other, and forgiving each other, and that was so important, so I think friendship is really important. I think she was there from the very beginning, and also I think becoming a mother as well. You don't have to have a kid, obviously, to do that, but this is just personally speaking. I just becoming a mom, I was like, I don't have. It was also this kind of my impatience. Like, I was like, I don't have time to deal with other people's bullshit, and I have actually substance to what I have to say, and I am mad at all of the kind of empty rhetoric I had to grow up with and listen to. And it wasn't like a one-time revelation. I think it was more of a series of revelations, and then it's just more about getting more and more and more comfortable with it until it becomes habit, I guess, if that makes sense. Yeah.
No, that does. I know that we have a lot of artists and creative folks in the room, so I did want to bring us back to what are some strategies / approaches to expressing minor feelings creatively besides writing a book?
Besides writing a book, like, I can only, my medium is writing, so I have a hard time answering that question. I would say, like, first of all, if you're younger and if you're still attached to your family, I would say You have to make work that's not a, that is not afraid to, you have to not be afraid to piss off your parents, piss off your family, or alienate them in some way. I think it does, like, I'm a professor, and I have, this is more for younger writers and artists, but I definitely have students who feel inhibited to really kind of speak, write, or make art about what's really deep inside them, because they're afraid of any kind of familial setback, so that's one. I don't know. I know it's a question. There's so many ways, for me, I think as a writer, what really helped me was, I've always been a restless poet. I was always wanting to go outside my genre and then bring it back in, like a kind of like a carpetbagger, and looking, even though I stopped making art, I was still constantly looking at art, and going to looking, I was inspired by so many artists, and if you read the book, I was so much inspired by stand-up comedy. I was also inspired by novels and, historical texts. And it's like, I wasn't really finding, like, I wanted to be honest about, I always knew that I wanted to write a book where I was very honest about race, but I needed to find models. And I was not finding the models in poetry quite, and I was not quite finding the models in fiction either. So I had to kind of travel far and wide to find it, and as I wrote in my book, I ended up finding a lot of that from Richard Pryor and looking at stand-up comedy and so forth. So I don't know. I mean, I think you just have to just be as adventurous and weird as you can. And when I started out, I was never interested in writing the New Yorker style poem. I was never interested. I was and I'm grateful for that I had the kind of mentors who was like, you have to write a perfect, you have to write a polished poem. I had the kind of mentors who were like, do something weird, do something ugly, do something that really kind of disrupts the status quo. And that has always been my kind of modus operandi from the very beginning. And, there was a lot of resistance to that. But I think if there was resistance, if there was a sense of struggle in my process, then I was doing something good, which is also a very masochistic way of making art or writing and so forth. I think there needs to be for those who are filmmakers. I got a question from someone, actually it was a random letter. It was a letter from someone else outside of the book group who asked, I'm a TV writer and I want to know how I can express minor feelings in television and film. And I would say that there's a lot of really, and please forgive me, filmmakers, for being untoward, making these untoward comments, but I think there's actually a lot of really brilliant poets and fiction writers and artists. I think Asian American TV and film are still in their infancy. I really would love to see, and I know that there's a lot of it's impossible because you need to get green lighted or whatever the term is, but I would love to see something radical and just to see something really honest. I haven't encountered it yet, really, in other Asian films, but not really Asian American films or TV, and I'm still waiting for that. So.
Okay, so we are getting to about time, so I'm going to ask one final thing, and I'm actually following a thread that's within the chat. Artist Jean Shen, she asked, after shame, is it perhaps rage that comes afterwards? And then someone in the chat responded, and they said, rechanneling rage. Christine Wong Yap articulated a thought I appreciate it, that perhaps there are forms of care that are as fierce as rage, that social justice and solidarity are fierce forms of caring. So just wanted to end on that note and maybe get your thoughts about forms of care that are as fierce as rage.
I think Naomi Klein was saying this, like, we need to change the economy of profit to, or investments, or to an economy based on care. And we have been so divorced from that. And I think, like, I was actually in the breakout room, we were talking about what to do, you know, and I was like, I just keep coming to the word revolution, and it's like, but that's what everyone thinks, but we don't know how. But I do think, like, we need to have this rage. You need both rage and care, but it's also, I think, if we're going to fight towards anything, it's towards this economy that's based on care, where there's like a social welfare, where there's an actual welfare net state, where there's healthcare and an equitable distribution of incomes, and free education and all of that. And that care is really important. It comes between friends, between groups, ethnic groups, women, marginalized groups, and also it needs to be systemic, you know. And so, yes, I totally say yes to that.
Yes to care.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I think we're at time. We're a bit over now, so I just wanted to thank Cathy Park Hong. Thank you so much for creating this work that has brought us all together tonight. I wanted to thank all of the moderators who led those discussions so beautifully. And I want to thank each and every one of you who have come here tonight. It's been such a pleasure to have you here, and we hope that you will join us for future Asia Society triennial events and other things to come. So thank you, everyone. Yes.
Can I just also say thank you to,
Absolutely.
and I just feel like we just touched upon so many big topics, and I hope that we'll be able to continue this discussion in real time. I just wish, I hope that someday I could just talk to you at a bar or something and just talk. I want to hear all of you. I just want to hear from all of you. Because I just think there's so many really insightful, incendiary questions and subjects raised, and I think it's really important that this continues on outside the screen someday.
No, and absolutely. And we have so many different organizations that came together tonight. And even in the chat, they're saying, yes, follow up book club meeting. There's so much to discuss. So I agree. This is just the beginning for us coming together, and I look forward to continuing these conversations.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.